Well, we found that most of the country think the government is no longer in control of Britain's borders. Nearly 60% of British adults say the government is no longer in control. 3/4 of Conservatives, 3/4 of Leavers. This, to me, actually takes us back to the early 2010s, when public confidence in the immigration system basically collapsed. And I think, in a way, we're right back there.
Yes, I mean, public loss of faith over borders, but also over sheer numbers coming into Britain. And you've just heard me talk about, schools in Kent having no places for certain years. A lot of that led, didn't it, to the momentum for a referendum and, indeed, the result of the referendum. So if 3/4 of Conservative voters think we've lost control of our borders, where does that put Rishi Sunak as our new Prime Minister in the eyes of the public?
I think it puts Rishi Sunak in a very difficult position, because the migration flows, as you've just said, are changing rapidly. I was struck listening to Dan O'Mahony speak to the Home Affairs Committee this week.
He's the Channel Task Force commander.
He's the Channel Task Force commander in the Home Office, and his point to me was sobering. He said, look, Albanians are the largest group within all of the groups that are crossing the Channel. And he was very explicit. He said, actually, this isn't about genuine asylum. This is about organised criminality. And I decided to poll the question this week, and we found that over 60% of people in Britain say, let's send Albanians back immediately, because I think, from their perspective, Albania is not in a war. There's no major conflict. It's joining the European Union. It's in formal talks as of this summer to join the European Union.
It's a NATO member.
And I think, on the one hand, we've got evidence showing that the British people are incredibly tolerant. They are welcoming of genuine refugees, Ukrainians, for example. But they are, on the other hand, clearly feeling and thinking that they're being taken for a ride.
Maybe the most significant figure there is that only 13% think Albanians should stay. And about 13% of the population think there should be no such thing as countries, no such thing as borders, and unlimited free movement of people. So that's obviously a very, the Albanian thing, clearly a very, very big issue. And, over 80% of Leave voters think they should just go. I mean, that the airstrip at Manston should be used effectively. What about the implications for the Conservative Party, for the Conservative Party leadership? Does the public have confidence, any confidence, that they're going to solve this?
I think this could be the end game for the Conservative Party. I think if they don't get their hands around this issue, this is going to be the final nudge that people need to not switch to Labour, but to stay at home and say, I've had it with all of these parties. We actually asked people this week, we said, who do you think would best manage this issue? The most popular answer was none of the above. The second most popular answer was you. The third most popular answer was Keir Starmer.
Wow.
And the fourth most popular answer was Rishi Sunak. Now, historically, the Conservative Party has owned immigration. Go back to the 90s, 2000s. You remember as well as I do, this was the Conservative Party issue. Here's the problem. The Conservative Party no longer owns immigration. That is a huge problem for Rishi Sunak and the Conservative Party, because if they've got no way of pulling these voters back, as you saw at PMQs today...
every question from Starmer at PMQs today was on this issue.
Keir Starmer is presenting himself like Tony Blair did in the late 90s, tough on crime, tough on the causes of crime. Keir Starmer is now saying, I'm tough on migration, I'm tough on the causes of migration.
I don't believe a word of it, by the way, and I don't think he'd be any better than the Conservatives, and possibly even worse. But the point you're making is that disenchantment with the Conservatives, if they don't solve this, could lead many to stay at home.
I'm worried about where we're heading as a country, actually. I think if we don't get our hands around this issue, look at Sweden, look at Italy, look at America, midterms next week. Border crises create enormous panic, they create concern, and they will disrupt the political order. And if Sunak doesn't deal with this, if he doesn't reform the Modern Slavery Act, if he doesn't reconsider our relationship with the European Convention on Human Rights, if he doesn't think about the Rwanda deal and expanding that to other countries and so on and so forth, my worry is that we are going to end up in the place that these other countries have ended up, with a much more polarised politics. And this is make or break for the Conservative Party, because if they can't control this issue, what other issue are they controlling?